Welcome to Binge Breakthrough, the podcast designed to help you finally break through the barriers that keep you stuck, feeling out of control around food. I'm Master Certified Coach Jane Pilger, and I want you to know that no matter how long you've been struggling or what you've tried, food freedom is possible, and I'm here to show you how. After years of therapy, eating disorders treatment, restrictive diets, and reading all the books, I was still stuck in the on-again, off-again cycle of restricting and binging until I was able to see it all from a new perspective that changed everything. Each week, I will share the strategies, tools, and mindset that allowed me to overcome my decades-long battle with binge eating. Your journey to body trust starts now. Let's dive in. Hello, trusted listener. Welcome to Binge Breakthrough. I'm excited for this podcast episode. We are going to be talking to a client of mine, Lauren Rappaport. I thought it would be fun to bring her on the show and just talk a little bit about what her experience has been like working with me and how her life has changed through our time together. So, Lauren, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to just see where this conversation goes. We're really just going to have a natural conversation and just see where we go. So let's start with this. How did you find me?
So I was talking to a fellow coach. I'm also a life coach. I help people who are living with type 1 diabetes, struggling, living with type 1. And I was doing this entrepreneurship program to help with my business. And she was just talking about other coaches that she works with. And she was talking about so-and-so, the weight loss coach that she works with, and somebody, a business coach. And then she mentioned Jane Pilger, the binge eating coach. And I was like, wait, binge eating coach? That exists? There's a binge eating coach in the world? I have to know everything there is to know about this binge eating coach, because I just didn't know that existed. And so I just looked you up. I did your quiz. And I booked a consult with you, like literally that second.
Yeah, so good. So good. So tell me a little bit about, obviously, when you heard binge eating coach, oh my gosh, I need to talk to her. I need to know what this is about. Tell me about like what life was like for you, anything that you want to share about kind of like where you were with food at that time.
Yeah, so in my life, I had come really far in terms of my relationship with type 1 diabetes, and I had given up drinking, and I was gotten really far in terms of just my mindset in life. But it was like the one area in life that I couldn't solve. I'm putting solve in quotes. I still I felt like I was like a prisoner to my thoughts around food. Like I would go to a party and I felt like all I would think about is food. Like I couldn't connect with people because I couldn't stop thinking about the food. Like I would think, like, for example, I would look at what other people are eating and I would think like, oh, they're having seconds. Maybe if I have seconds, they won't notice that I'm having seconds. Or I want to have thirds, but I can't have thirds because no one else is having thirds. And I felt like food was all I was thinking about. Or the way that I ate was I was very, very restrictive during the week. So Monday through Friday, I would not eat carbs, and I was super restrictive during the week. And then on the weekends, I would eat whatever I wanted. And I don't even know if I realized that eating whatever I wanted was binging. I mean, really and truly binging. I'm not even sure when I realized that was actually binging. And so my eating was very tied to the days of the week. So if somebody invited me to a party, I'd think, well, when is the party? If the party's on a Tuesday night, I'm not going to the party. But if the party's on a Saturday night, then I could go to the party. So my entire social life was dependent on days of the week.
Yes.
So it really ruled my life and my thoughts, eating.
Yeah. Yeah. So how was your life impacted? Like what other impacts were all of these food struggles having on your life?
My weight fluctuated. I pretty much think I have every size, like every like clothing size at one point I had in my closet. Probably from
Yes.
like a 00 to a 14, really and truly in my closet. And I have type 1 diabetes. So it's not just weight. It was my blood sugars were not great as a result of my binging. It affected my emotions. As you can imagine, I would binge and then I would, after a big binge, I would be rendered on the couch, just totally in a shame spiral. That would probably last a couple days. I felt awful after a binge, just
Yeah.
super shameful.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about like what did you learn in terms of like through our process together? Like what were things that you learned kind of about yourself and about the binging and the process as we worked together through all of this?
Yeah, so I was in preparation of the podcast. I was thinking, like, what were the biggest changes? Because this is the fun part. I get to gush about you. So, I mean, there's so many things, but the top three things I learned, and I'm sure I don't know if you can refer people back to other podcasts. I don't know how educated the audience is, but the top thing is learning. Is the nervous system in terms of subconsciously, I would eat to regulate my nervous system. I would eat to calm my anxiety. And so I learned that now when I'm feeling activated or I'm feeling anxious, I can stop and say, what else can I do to regulate my nervous system? So I can stop and say, oh, I'm feeling anxious. Maybe I'll go for a walk. Or maybe I can do this thing called legs up against the wall, which is a very simple yoga pose. Cause I get restless leg a lot. So I can just like do legs up against the wall and that like calms me down. Or I can do like a little tapping meditation. There's so many things I can do now instead of eat. And so it's a really simple thing that I know that I can do instead of binging. There's so many tools that make me feel calmer instead of binging. It's like I have alternatives now.
Right. It's like there didn't even used to be any alternative. It's like food was the answer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 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 So good. Okay. So you said there's three?
Oh, yes.
Three things?
Yeah. So the second thing is, as a life coach, I know that just because I have a thought does not make it true, but I didn't know how to apply it to eating. I didn't know that was a thing that I could apply to eating until you taught me that you taught me how to apply to eating in the sense of I would think things like, once I have one chip, I have to have them all. So I'd go to a Mexican restaurant and I would just be like, well, I've had one. I might as well have them all. And I would go into autopilot eating, right? Where you just like eat the chips on total autopilot. And then once I'm eating an autopilot, then I totally disconnect from the people that I'm sitting at the restaurant with. So I'm stuffing my face when I'm with people and I'm not connected to the people and I'm just in that autopilot eating. And you taught me that I can come online at any time.
Yes.
And it's like, that just changed my life because when I'm in that autopilot eating, not only am I totally disconnected, but like it's funny. It's like you're in autopilot, but you're still managing to feel shame.
Yes.
And so when I realize that I can connect, I can like, when it's come online, it's like I can connect with my thoughts and realize that they're not true. That if I stop eating the chips, actually half a basket or even just 3 chips is still better than eating the whole bowl. Yes. Because it's better for my blood sugars, it's better for my waistline, it's better for how gross I'm going to feel. And so like I can actually come online and make an intentional decision at any time. That changed my whole life. Really.
Yeah. So good. So good. So good. Now, well, now I got to know what's number 3.
Okay. So number 3 is, okay. So when I was super restrictive Monday through Friday, and then I would binge on the weekends. And I thought I was going to learn how to just first stop binging. What I didn't realize is that the reason I was binging is because I was starving myself, like really and truly pretty much starving myself. And that it's because there wasn't that trust between my mind and my body. And at
Yes.
first I had to remove the restriction and build that trust that I was actually going to get calories. So it was removing the restriction, giving myself permission to eat. It's like that power of permission to
Yes.
eat whatever I wanted during the week. And then once you give yourself permission to eat during the week, then the binges, you don't really need to binge as much when you're actually getting food. It's like so intuitive.
Yes.
But I didn't realize that it's removing the restrictions first,
Yes.
giving yourself permission to eat. And then you don't need to binge as much. And then I sort of like shifted my mindset around the days of the week. Like the days of the week sort of stopped becoming as important once I started just sort of eating on a Tuesday.
Yes.
Like eating kind of whatever I want on a Tuesday. And then now the days of the week don't really matter.
Yes. Yes. So good. So good. So good. So tell me this, you're actually the first client that I worked with that has T1D. And I'm curious about, and it's a topic that, we talked about quite a bit, but what did you discover for yourself in terms of having T1D and how that has impacted your overall relationship with food and even potentially that kind of like helps make sense of the binge eating?
Yeah. So it definitely adds a different layer. Because for me, there was an extra layer of shame.
Yeah.
Where I shouldn't be eating this because I have type 1 diabetes. And so that power of permission really, really helped me. Where it's like, I'm giving myself permission to eat whatever I want. I have to be really careful I just have to give myself insulin. So I'm giving myself insulin to make sure that I count for the carbs. And because there's a lot of there's restriction with type 1 diabetes. I think that's where a lot of my original issues came from. So I want to make sure that I'm really responsible, that my blood sugars are in check. But I think that the power of permission really helped with the freedom aspect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
It's super interesting to think about how, where we would talk about, like, one of the things that I love to do with any client is really understand how it makes sense, like how it makes sense that your binge eating developed or why it's still here. And so it's work that I do with every client. And with you specifically, it was fascinating. There were really two things going on. There was from childhood, this restriction of, no, you can't eat these foods. These foods they're dangerous. They're bad for you. So there's this natural restriction that had been happening for so long. And then we also had kind of then what you were explaining between the difference of the days of the week, like the weekends versus during the week. So there were really kind of like two restriction going on in both cases, but kind of like there was like just a different thought process behind both. So
and that's like when you do food experiments, I try to bring in my classic shame. I'm putting in quotes, shame foods. I felt a lot of shame when I would sneak candy bars as a kid. And it's like, no, I can have a candy bar as long as I account for it with my insulin. There is no shame. There's no shame food. I can eat whatever I want. Right. And I try to encourage when I talk to my clients or my clients' parents, or parents of kids with type 1, the more you can give your child who has type 1 empowerment. And it's hard because it really, when you have type 1, if you can give insulin ahead of time, it does help with your control, with the management of type 1. But if you can give some sort of empowerment, it helps with the binging.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So
right. Because there's this sense of choice instead of feeling like I have no control. I have no choices. I have no control. It really does give you more of the sense, no, I'm actually choosing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. So how else, is there anything else that you have like learned through our work together that then you're now able to utilize in your own business working with people with T1D?
The nervous system has been life-changing for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely life-changing, because when you live with type 1, there's, the nervous system is all about perception of danger. When you perceive danger, it sends our nervous system into fight or flight or freeze or any sort of survival state. And so living with type 1, there's like this hypervigilance. Blood sugars are going high, blood sugar is going low. If you have an insulin pump or a continuous glucose monitor, there's, just last night I was sleeping and my insulin pump beeped and woke me out of the sleep. So there's that, constant state of alertness. So understanding these biological stress responses is super important when you have type 1. So learning that from you has been life-changing. And I actually have been teaching, classes, people with type 1 classes on the nervous system. Just recognizing the states, knowing how to regulate your nervous system, getting back to that calm state has been absolutely life-changing. So not only to teach my clients, but just so I can recognize when a client is activated. So I can know not to coach a client when they're activated.
Yes.
And so I can help either co-regulate them or just help them get back to that window of tolerance.
Yeah, so powerful. So Lauren started, for those of you listening, Lauren started as a private client. We worked together one-on-one, and she's now in the group coaching program in Cultivate. And we actually there's another woman inside Cultivate who has a son with type 1 diabetes. And it's been so fascinating. So this woman she shared about some of her own fears around her son and monitoring his levels and, some of the stress that she has around, watching after her son. And so it's been really amazing to watch Lauren be able to talk to this other woman in the group, and she's able to then see, oh yeah, okay, that is what is happening. That is my nervous system. And I am, kind of on this constant state of alert for him. And so that's been, even another benefit, like even within our program, is that you've been able to help somebody else in the group through that shared understanding of what it's like to not only to monitor the, your blood sugar levels, but also the kind of like constant state of alert around that.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
yeah.
And
so go ahead.
I was just saying, and then the other thing is just understanding the 8 reasons why we binge. In the back of my mind, it's super helpful as I'm working with clients who, struggle with eating just from the restriction. Always have in the back of my mind. So it's super helpful.
Yeah. Well, and I would imagine there's probably a commonality of having type 1 diabetes, having these kind of restrictions that are placed on you for your blood sugars, and then also that then turning into just overall eating challenges. Like it makes sense that would be a
growing up with type 1, the inability to, I don't know if it's an inability, what is the low capacity to feel our emotions?
Low emotional capacity. Yeah.
Capacity, I think.
Yeah.
And I think as part of life coaching, that's something that we learn.
Yeah.
Or that we teach is how to feel our emotions. That's super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So paint us a little bit of a picture. You kind of painted us a picture of here's what life was like before we started working together. And then you kind of told us, here's some of the kind of the 3 like big things that I learned. And then paint us a picture now, like what is it like for you now with food or just in general?
Okay. So on Sunday, I went to brunch and was just chatting with friends, and somebody made a comment. It was literally just talking to friends, and somebody made a comment, and she was like eating the dessert, and she said, oh, I can't stop eating this dessert. And all of a sudden it hit me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I actually forgot that I used to be so driven by food, and that I would have normally been like, I think I told the story at the beginning of this, that I normally would have been obsessing over what everyone else was eating and what people were thinking. I just didn't have that food chatter. And I mean, I'm not perfect. Like I remember I had seconds of those enchiladas and I had a second enchilada. And I remember thinking, I probably didn't need that second enchilada. Like I sort of mindlessly had the second. I mean, it's not perfect. I think it's just called normal eating.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yes.
but I wasn't thinking any of that same food chatter.
So amazing.
Yeah. So that's like the main thing. And then like I get invited to a party and I just think the reasons for going have nothing to do with food or the day of the week. I think like, who's going? Do I want to go to this party? Do I think it'll be fun? Like it's just totally different reasons that has nothing to do with food. Let's see. If I get invited to a wedding in 6 months, I could buy a dress 6 months out and I don't stress about like, I don't know what my weight's going to be like. I can't shop 6 months from now. Like, yes, I've gained some weight, of course, like I absolutely, because I was way too skinny when I had restricted, but I'm at like a normal, regular weight and I don't have those yo-yo fluctuations. It's like, I'm just at like a normal, natural weight. And I don't worry that in 6 months, I'm going to be totally yo-yoed. It's like, it's actually mind blowing when I think about it.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, and I can have, when I think about the food that I can have in my house, I used to only shop and buy food that is not tempting, like salads or like ketchup in my house. And now I have like crackers in my house. I can have like cookies in my house. And I've had the same box of crackers in my house for like 3 weeks. And I just have like a handful of crackers. I mean, I just can't even, it feels like magic. Like it's really hard to believe.
Yeah. So good. So good. So good.
I'm trying to think if I have any other, I mean, there's so many examples. And then basically when I think about what criteria goes to my mind when I eat, it's like, am I hungry? How's this food going to make me feel? What is it going to taste like? I mean, sometimes the taste wins out. So I end up eating like cookies over salad.
Sure.
I'm still working on that a little bit, but yeah, it's not like binging obsession that wins out.
Yes.
It's just like those kind of qualities.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. So good. So good. So what would you say if somebody was like, okay, I hear your story. Like I good for you. That's good for you. Like, that's so amazing. But maybe they're thinking I could never do that, or that's just her, or maybe she was already a life coach. And so maybe, she had something else that like, I don't have. Like, what would you say to somebody who's listening to this and is like, I would love to have that, but I just don't think it's possible for me?
Yeah, that's actually a great point. I think about, I've been a life coach 3 years, and I worked with a life coach before that for, I think, 2 years. Before that, I'm trying to think. So decades. I was in therapy for decades, and I probably could write a book. I could really probably write a book of journals filled with my food drama. Mm-hmm. Decades. All I talked about with my therapist was food. I mean, that's not true. I really struggled with like OCD, and my therapist got me through my OCD, luckily. But decades of talking about my food issues, and they just couldn't help me. I mean, so I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 3 years old, and would sneak food. I mean, my parents know this at this point. Would sneak food from my parents as a little kid. I would call it rebellion. I would rebel with food, with diabetes, and just decades of talking to therapists and just journaling on food. And it was just the one thing that no therapist could help me with. And I truly feel like if I solved this problem, anybody could. I just really believe that you're a miracle worker.
Well,
I really do. Yeah, I mean, you have to put in the work. You do have to put in the work.
Yeah. And you did. You have absolutely put in the work. And as you were sharing the stories, even about like the foods that you have in your place right now, it's like that was a journey. She didn't just overnight, all of a sudden, there's all of this stuff in her house, and there's zero chatter and there's zero drama around it. Like, this is a process, but it's so amazing to be able to see, okay, what did it look like before? And we're talking a lifetime of sneaking food and rebelling with food. And if you, as you're listening, you may not resonate with T1D, but I can't even tell you how many of my clients have had food restricted from them in some way or another. If it's not because of T1D, maybe it's just your parental figure said, no, you can't have that. Or they took you to Weight Watchers, or you were the quote unquote larger child. And so the other siblings got dessert and you didn't, or whatever, or it was just the comments that were made at school. Most of my clients have something like that from their past. And this is something that they've been working on for decades or for a lifetime. And whether there has been previous therapy, previous treatment, previous other things, it's like there really is. And it's really not even, it's not traditional coaching, like life coaching. For example, I actually have a client who I've started working with recently who had done some kind of traditional like thought work coaching. And she was just like, oh my gosh, this is so different than anything else that I've learned about or I've read about or anything in like all of my journeys through this. So it's hard to describe and it's hard to quantify, but it is so powerful.
Yeah. And it happens so slowly.
Yeah.
Right. That's why when I was at brunch on Sunday, I forgot.
Yes.
Right. I had to really think about in preparing for this podcast that like, what was it like? And I almost forgot how deep my pain was around food.
Yeah.
And I really dug deep, and I was like, it was decades, and it was deep, and it was miserable. And
isn't it powerful to think about how it's like, I used to like literally be obsessed and every single thought was about food. And now it's like, oh, okay, like I still enjoy food and I still, all of that, but like all of that extra mental space and that extra like food chatter just isn't there anymore.
Yeah. I remember my friend, I think in college, we were like, what would we think about if we didn't worry about weight and food? What's left in life to worry about?
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, I mean, again, it's not obviously it's not perfect. There's still things to work on. Like, my goals are to eat a little bit healthier. But it's sort of like sometimes we create mind drama because we can, but yeah, it's here. Like now it's like, now I have big goals.
Yeah.
And I'm working on my business.
Yeah. So good. Yeah, it's so good. So good. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time and being willing to talk about it and to talk about your journey kind of before, what it looked like and your journey now, because this is a subject that is very challenging for a lot of people to talk about. And that is a reason that I have not really, had other people on and to talk about it, because this is a very private journey. And I mean, I can remember so clearly, I wouldn't even join like Facebook groups where even on the topic of binge eating, where somebody might be able to see my name and know that I was binge eating. Like there was just so much shame around it. And there are a lot of people that I end up talking to who have that I am the very first person that they have told about anything that they're doing, that they've told about their binging, because there is so much shame. So I really appreciate you, being willing to come on and to share your story and hopefully just give some hope and some inspiration to other people who are, more in that before picture, but to truly know, like, change is possible. No matter what you've done, no matter how long it's been, no matter what you've tried, it is possible. So like, don't give up hope, and don't believe that little voice in your head that says you'll never figure this out. You will always be this way. It does not have to be that way.
Well, I'm so grateful to you. And I recommend you to anyone who even so much as mentions that they're struggling with eating, because I think you're amazing.
Well, thank you. And I'm so glad that the person from that conference mentioned that that I was a binge eating coach. So
wherever you are, thank you so much.
So good. So fun. Well, thank you, Lauren. I will see you inside Cultivate. And I will, if anybody is listening to this podcast and they're really resonating with and you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I have T1D, or I have a family member with T1D. Like, I didn't even know, just like Lauren heard somebody else say binge eating coach. What? I didn't even know such a thing existed. If you did not know that such a thing exists as a type 1 diabetes coach, it does. And Lauren is one. And she obviously works through a lot of the same things I do with the nervous system and connecting, and that perception of creating more safety around your T1D. So if that is of interest to you, I will link her website in the show notes so that you can check her out. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Binge Breakthrough. If you want to understand why you feel out of control with food sometimes, I've created just the thing for you. Discover the #1 reason why and get 3 things you can do today. Visit bingeBreakthrough.com/quiz and you'll have your answer and your next steps within minutes. That's bingeBreakthrough.com/quiz.